911, what's your emergency?
The following content is graphic, emotional, and includes dark humor that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised. These stories are based on real-life EMS, military, and healthcare experiences. Calls are real, providers are real, names and details have been changed to protect privacy. They may be disturbing to some and are definitely inappropriate for HR department. Any medical or mental health discussion is personal experience, not protocol. Use your damn brain. Follow your local guidelines, and when in doubt, call med control. If you're struggling, don't do it alone. Talk to someone, a coworker, a friend, a therapist, or hell, reach out to me. I'll answer. Need help right now? Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. All right. Welcome back to Dispatch Dysfunctional. This was going to hit a lot of people who are still showing up, still working, still helping, still checking on everyone else, while quietly sinking themselves. Today's guest is Andrew McLean, an author, advocate, police officer for 18 years. But before the badge, the book, the years in service, the advocacy, or anything polished, you wrote something on your form that really stuck with me. You wrote, "I was desperate to help others, but couldn't help myself." That right there says more to me than anything that anyone else could have written. But before we get into the leadership, the burnout, PTSD, the trauma, or even the book, who are you really, and what made this conversation worth saying yes to?
I it's kind of funny because who am I really? I think this is now at 50, I'm finally starting to realize who I am. You know, this journey, uh, it's been humbling. It's been a real eye opener as to my personality and who I am. So I was an only child, so I was born to help, and so I that manifested from my childhood all the way until I broke. And my breaking kind of highlighted who I was. You highlight what you had just said about what I wrote, and it's kind of true. I at the core was a people pleaser, a helper, and I always felt like I had an insight into people's personality, and I could relate to anyone, and I didn't know at the time that that was my empathy, and I had a lot of that, and so I was always driven into careers and things that would lead me to help people. So like as a teenager, I was the guy that all of my friends came to when they had problems, or girl problems, or whatever problems were coming up. Um, and then that just kind of blossomed into my journalism career because I went into that to try to help and bring people's stories to light and that sort of thing. And then, you know, the logical progression after I started having responsibility was going into policing. And, it kind of reminds me of the stat answer when I was in the Chiefs interview and they're like, "Why do you want to do this?" And I said, "Well, I want to help people." And I think honestly, when we get into these careers, that's exactly what you want to do, right? And so, that sounds noble and all. Um, but I also put everyone else ahead of me. So I couldn't relax until everyone else around me was happy. And so that was home life, that was family life, that was my social life, that was my work life. And what I didn't know was happening to me is that, each call, each something, I carried a piece of that with me until I finally broke. And so I'm finding out now, right, through this journey that, you know, that noblest of cause perhaps was the cause of my downfall. So that's what's kind of led into my advocacy now and writing the book is that, you know, we can go into this with the noblest intentions, but if you don't pay attention to yourself, I'm a prime example. This is what can happen to you. And it's such an insidious path because you think you're doing the right thing, especially like born of a blue collar family and all of that, that your work ethic is what you are. And so you do your best to be that person and it's not sustainable. So and I think I think who I am now is someone who has learned that it's okay not to be okay.
And that
If that
cumulative
makes
stress gets to all of us, like you said. It builds up, and over time, it starts to make us degrade our own selves, and just the smallest minuscule conversation even will make us go to that breaking point, like you said. The whole point that we got into this job. I know I'm repeating a lot of what you said, but and it makes sense in everything you said. Is like you said at the beginning, is we got into this job to help people, and that was the ultimate goal. And I think a lot of us, actually probably 98% of us, are all people pleasers if we're in this line of work. Um, and so I know you mentioned dark humor before as well. So why do you think first responders trust people who understand our dark humor? Why is it that we couldn't just trust an outside person that says, "Oh, I have dark humor," but they don't know what the fuck they're talking about because they really don't understand it?
right. I honestly think that, yeah, who would like dark humor is it's definitely a coping mechanism. But the thing is that we don't trust somebody with dark humor who hasn't walked the walk and talked the talk. Like we've actually seen it, right? So when we have the dark humor, we speak from experience. We know what we're talking about. Like it's like how do you cope with that senseless tragedy you were just at? And it, you know, I would think that the normal person would be kind of disgusted by, our dark humor, to be quite honest. But I mean, for us, how else are you supposed to cope? And so when it comes from somebody who hasn't talked the talk or walked the walk, like it holds no credibility to us. It's almost offensive. And in the safe circles of us, because we're all a brotherhood and a sisterhood, that we can unwind like that without offending anyone, to be honest. Like and it's not even because that's not our intent. Our intent is to just cope. It's not to offend anybody.
Yeah, and that seems to happen a lot. Like, I've gotten kicked out of a few places because I'm talking to my family, and my wife understands things, my kids understand it, um, and they have gotten the dark humor in the end. And it's funny to see people that don't understand our lives, how offended, like you said, they become. Hell, we were in a restaurant at one point, and one of the families like, I'm eating here. Okay, well, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I'm talking about my job. Get over it.
yeah, yeah. That's
And maybe
that's
that's
honestly
asshole.
like
Maybe that's assholish of me to say, but at the same time, if we don't get it out, it does accumulate, and it does.
right.
You know,
And I think honestly, like that's part of my what I'm working on. Honestly, is that's why I don't like public places because not only are you, I don't necessarily say we're not afraid to say stuff. It's more how is this going to go over? Then you start having to overthink what it is you're saying, but you also pick up on other people's conversations. And because that's naturally who we are. We're always scanning, we're always listening, we're always, around. And when you start picking up on other people's conversations, that could be quite inane to anyone else. We might find offensive. And then we don't like it's hard to control that trigger as well. Because again, it's like I often say like hear myself in my brain saying if I'm at the grocery store, it's like, you have no idea what suffering is. Shut up. Like, or just stop the virtue signaling, stop the fake conversations because we can spot it a mile away, right? And it's draining. And honestly, it is.
yeah,
Um,
yes,
and so finding that sort of balance is very difficult, I find in public settings. I have like kind of my time limit, and then I got to get the hell out of there because I absorb it all, and we can't help it because that's what we were trained to do. But at the same time, it's like you know, wow. It's just, and then you start going down that spiral of this is what society's become. And then you get angry at that. And then it's just, yeah, it turns the whole day around. And then pretty
rabbit
soon,
hole.
3 days. Yeah. But pretty soon you're taking 3 days to recover from it all, right? Like it's just, yeah, no, I get it. Like, it's often like we, we have a hard time as first responders trusting people who aren't first responders or military or have had to make difficult choices or have seen actual suffering,
Yeah,
right?
and I think
And know what true victimhood is. And when people claim to be a victim when they're not, I like what we perceive as not, it's it's frustrating. Yeah.
I think that's where, we're all trapped on trying to get our own help or trying to find therapists that understand us. And it's really a trap for us as first responders. We're wired to help others, but we can't get help unless it's one of our own helping us. We run towards our other emergencies. We notice coworkers when they're off. Hell, we carry the public, we carry the team, we carry the shifts. But it comes down to helping ourselves. Um, we minimize it. We minimalize it. We joke about it. We hide it. We all say we're good, and we're not. Um, and something you said too, when people keep shoving this inside of themselves, is you say they slowly sink into despair. That kind of stuck with me because it's true. You keep shoving it down and shoving it down and shoving it down, you are going to cause yourself to go into some kind of despair. It may not be what everyone thinks it is, but you know. So let's start here, I guess. When did you realize that you were helping everyone else while you were slowly sinking yourself?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it happens so gradually that you don't almost see it happening to yourself because there's two things at play there. There's one that I'm the leader, I'm this, I'm that. This isn't going to happen to me. It's part of the job, is kind of what goes through your head. So whatever's happening to you, you're right, you dismiss it because it's just part of the job, right? You're nervous going to that call, or you're having a flashback about that dead baby or whatever, thinking that that call is going to turn out to be the same. You're starting to have um, nightmares about certain work stuff. I mean, your nightmares might not have anything to do with work, but all of a sudden that face of the victim is a character in your dream and it turns very horrific. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the actual thing itself. It's just your brain trying to process this smorgasbord of crap that keeps going through your head. And so you're not sleeping all of a sudden, and then you become irritable, and then you start resenting things, um, and I think we all see that on the job with people, about after 5 years, I would say, is when it starts to sink in. And you know, you want to get courses, and you don't get a course, for instance, and you get all mad about that. And then, just stuff that doesn't matter. But then also after that, so like driving home, for instance, after a shift, and you've got family responsibilities, and you're cursing and swearing at the guy in front of you because they ain't moving fast enough, right? Because you're still in that mode. You got to get home, you got to get the kids, you got to go here or make dinner, and each segment of your day is planned out to a T. And so I found myself like angry, but I mean, out of that anger was a root of envy that people could go about their day like that and without urgency. And I wish I was like that. Um, so and then I started disassociating, like the last thing I wanted to do when I came home was make a decision. Um, I couldn't make a decision sometimes. Like I was just so foggy that I'd like, what's for dinner seems overwhelming to me, to decide what to make for dinner or you know, do I need to get gas now or can I wait till the morning? Just stuff like that where you're just tired, right? And for lack of a better term, you're just tired and irritable, and things that you used to do, like, when this wasn't happening, no longer interest you. So you just don't do it. So you start to become numb, and then that's when the self-destructive behavior starts. So then that's when you start picking up the bottle or doing some drugs or whatever it is you're good at, gambling, sex, whatever it is that you do. So for me, it was around year 5, but I didn't know what was happening,
Right.
right? I just thought it was part of the job, and of course the culture is suck it up, sunshine. This is part of the way it is.
Get over it.
We're short on the road, so like. What are you going to do? Not work? Well, no, that's not an option because there's only fucking eight of us for 200,000 people. So let's go,
Well,
sort
and
of
then
thing. And
on
so
that side too is
so
say you did go to your captain or your chief and tell them, hey, I'm having mental issues. That makes your job go away. You're no longer going to be able
yes,
to be a cop. And I think that's one of the double edged swords that we seem to have in our realm of work.
no, I agree. I agree with you 1,000% because again, I was speaking from my own experience, when I really knew something was wrong, um, who the hell was I going to go tell? Right? Because let's face it, we're alone a lot of the time when, obviously we're going to calls and stuff, but we're in the patrol car by ourselves or in the detective van by ourselves. And there's a lot of time there to think of very self-destructive behavior. You got a sidearm beside you. And when suicide was, when I attempted that and literally had the Glock in my mouth, the only thing that stopped me was my dad's voice at that point. But do you think I reported that? Because I was like, what the fuck would happen? Like I am totally broken. I don't know where to turn. But if I turn to work, they're gonna take my gun, they're gonna take my badge, they're gonna put me in a loony bin, they're gonna do this, that, the other, they're gonna force me into treatment that I don't want. And I'll never get promoted and I'll never get a special assignment again. And I might be photocopying papers for the homicide branch when I was the one leading those investigations sometimes, general investigations or whatever. And so how can I like I can't do that. Like I would die doing stuff like that when I like catching bad guys. I like writing the warrants. I like investigating shit. And if you're going to tell me that I can't do that anymore, plus the stigma attached to it because your buddies are going to look at you differently and you know whether that's in our head or not, it's not. Well, I mean on our level, like on the on
Partially
the
is.
on the con on the constable sort of patrol, like the grunt level, maybe there's going to be some guys that understand, but certainly in the management level, no, not at all. And what is the help that they're going to offer you, right? And so you're dealing with a whole lot at that point when it happens. And I think that when people like when guys like us, like when we finally get to the point where we're like, fuck, I need help. Um, you're already far gone. You're too far gone at that point. Like by the time I sought out help, my doctor and therapist and stuff were like, they already knew I had PTSD. I just didn't have the fucking official diagnosis. But they're like, we can't. After what you told us, you cannot work. We're not letting you. And that's was a big blow to me because now you're losing your identity too, right? Your worst fears are starting to come true, and so it's not an easy journey, that's for sure. And when the process starts, it's you're constantly explaining yourself. And as people pleasers, remember we talked about that. That's all we do is we over explain, right?
So I
And
think, and on that side of it, as you said, the management or leadership really don't understand, even though they did come from our realm. I don't quite understand or comprehend on why it is that we're sitting here struggling, and we know they did at one point, but at the same time they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground on how to help us
right,
if we did
no,
go. And I don't quite understand that. But
no, I think having had some time to think about this and I mean up here and I'm sure down there too, s- a change happened in leadership around the early 2010s, let's just say. And when I started, leaders, sergeants, staff sergeants, or whatever would be a lieutenant, maybe or a captain or whatever, they kind of had your back. Yeah, if you made a mistake, you're gonna get in shit, but at least you learn from it and um, have your back. That changed, and one quote that was said to me a long time ago was that if you're going to be a leader, so when I was putting in for sergeant, remember that it's about the people under your charge. It's not about you. It's not a title for you, right? And that always stuck with me. I'm a big, big proponent in leading by example, but somewhere along the way, they lost their way in that. And it became a competition amongst the chosen few who decide to progress up. And a lot of them, quite honestly, started coming from the administrative side of policing. So they didn't really lead investigations. They didn't, you know, they were probably on patrol for a couple of years and then went into something that isn't police related. Like, but they wore the uniform. You know what I mean? They weren't out catching bad guys every day. They weren't in
They
a
wore
specialty
uniform.
branch. Yeah, and yeah, it's so they kind of lose touch with that, right? So they were more worried about all of a sudden people were worried about overtime and uh, shit that shouldn't matter. Like, I remember when I was in detectives, we were arguing about calling out our SWAT guys, our ERU, um, because we just had a drive-by shooting. We found the car involved, and we know the building he's in at least. And they're like, well, maybe we should maybe you guys could just watch it till the morning and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what if the guy comes out? I'm not a tac team. Like, what am I supposed to do? In my suit, take him
Oh,
down with my
stay
block?
there.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, why? So we started kind of losing touch with what it is we're supposed to be doing. And I think the trickle down effect of that is for guys who actually give a shit and do their job well and are empathetic and want to fight for victims and get bad guys behind bars and stuff. When you're constantly justifying that to management, the effect it has not only on morale, but your mental health is astounding. It really is. Like when you're getting in shit from the public because of the uniform you wear and the job you do, plus getting in shit for not solving it or doing something against procedure or with procedure, like whatever, it's like, what the hell am I doing this for? And so you kind of lose your way. So that wide-eyed recruit, when you start your job, you're like, yeah, this is fun and whatever. And as you kind of progress through that, you're like, I thought we were supposed to be here catching bad guys, and I thought we were supposed to be doing this stuff. So when you have to go to a victim, like a true victim, and say, there's nothing we can do, um, it's not brass doing that, it's us because of decisions that we have no control over. And you have to deal with that emotional fallout, that moral injury, because you want to do the right thing and can't, but you have to deal with that person too. And I often say, like, sometimes, people in those positions, no wonder they hate cops. Like it's well, seriously, it's like,
And it's true. I laugh at that, but it's true and it makes
yeah,
sense. You know.
yeah, it's tough because then you start questioning your own identity too. Like, do I really like what I'm doing? I'm good at it, I think. I mean, I don't get in shit, so that must mean I'm doing things okay. But I think when you couple sort of that scenario of the grieving mom or dad whose son was murdered or severely assaulted and is basically brain dead at the hospital or whatever, and you're like, in your brain, you're going, well, we couldn't get the proper teams, but we've lost that evidence and we can't, and so you suffer that moral injury, but you're also, as empathetic souls that we are, and I think the good ones truly are, um, absorbing that, and you have to take a piece of that with you every single time it happens. That's what I think where the demoralization happens. And I think that's what the public may not understand is that it's not just what we see. It's what we feel and what we have to do as well. And you know, I the shelf life on that, I mean, I can't put into words, but I know a ton of guys off now and we were all doing the same shit. And I shudder to think what's left,
And it's funny.
inside.
it's funny you said it that way too, because I actually had a guest yesterday who's an author, um, who didn't realize our mindset, until he started writing about us. And we were talking yesterday. He had a he read in a paper about a firefighter saving 14 and losing 3. And the firefighter, of course, just like me and you lose that 3, that's bigger than saving those 14. And it's amazing to see or understand that the public doesn't quite get that. We can save as many as we want. That's all fair and good, but the ones we lose stay with us.
Yeah, and they do, and it's kind of funny the ghosts you carry, right? Because I think you know with my post-traumatic stress, there are horrific calls that I completely forget about. And then all of a sudden they just pop back up. It's like, oh yeah, fuck, I remember that. And in the process of writing the book, it was kind of the same sort of thing. Those are just a couple of examples that I put in there, but it would bring up this flood of memories that your brain's protecting you from. And it's never the one you save. It's always the ones that are lost, or you know the 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 guy, like the addict on the street that would always give you information, or you talk to and stuff like that, that used to be addicted to crack, and then they unfortunately get into meth and fentanyl and they die. And so you've essentially known this person for 10 years and you interact with them, whatever. I was a firm believer you treat people how you're treated, right? And so the only way to get to know these people is to treat them like humans, but then all of a sudden now they're just dead in some crack den somewhere, and what a waste of life, right? So even that you carry with you. It's you know I don't I'm not a spiritual guy, but I went to a psychic once, and as soon as I walked in, this person knew nothing about. I walk into this room, and the psychic looked at me with this blank stare, going, "Holy shit!" And I was like, "Yes." I was like, "What?" And she's like, "You are the walking poster child for post-traumatic stress, and I have never seen so many spirits attached to one person." And I was like, wow. And then she started bringing up shit that actually happened. And this person never fucking knew me, right? And so I was like, wow, yeah, no wonder I feel tired all the time. Yeah, they're like clinging to you, sort of thing. And I'm like, but that kind of got me onto the train. And this was before I was diagnosed. I was still working at the time, and I thought, wow, that kind of makes sense because that I used to, after a sudden death or something like that, something tragic, like like an old man
Sure.
who died in his home, whatever, and his wife is sitting there crying, and you spend the extra couple hours with his widow because they've been married for 50 years, sort of thing. And I always used to go home and just have a little shot of whiskey for every death that I had, just a little toast to them, right? Um, but you think of how many of those I've been to, I can't even count. And you know, if they're all attaching themselves, then yeah, I get that, because you always take a piece of a call away from you,
With you.
sort of thing with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, and so that kind of opened my eyes to that, and it was shit,
I
because you
wonder
don't know.
what the name of this one.
Yeah, so it's just like wow, yeah, but yeah, it's I think that because I think most of the public interaction, say with police, is that they get a ticket or they get pulled over or whatever, and or the other one was let's just say you have your bike stolen from the garage, and your kid's bike or your bike or whatever, some tools taken out of your garage. I mean, for us, that's not a very high priority call, right? It's important to you, 1000%, but there's other crap we have to deal with. But what the public doesn't understand is the other crap we have to deal with. So when that salty officer comes to your house and he's not really caring, you don't know what that person came from. That's the problem. And so or if that investigation just kind of goes nowhere, it's because that officer, and I've seen it, that they come from a baby death, a baby murder, and they have to get their notes done, they have to give them to detectives, and they got to hit the road because the calls are piling up. Well, you come from that and you go to the break and enter into your garage. Um, the shift in mindset on that is it's not a professionalism thing. It's a I haven't processed the last call yet, and don't hear a word you're saying right now. All I can think about is what I just saw. And I think a lot of, again, where I criticize some management in this is that they don't see the forest for the trees on things like that. And I don't understand it because, like you said, they came from where we're coming from, but those guys need some time. Calls can wait, man. Like you got to protect your resources, and the guys in the front are your most important resource. But when we're in the highest risk, sort of highest frequency part of policing, how do you expect them to react? They're not robots, man. Some of them probably have babies at home. It's like, how can you turn that on and off, right? So yeah, part of what I do is I'm trying to at least let the public know kind of where that comes from I'm not sticking up for the bad cops. No, but no cop would stick up
Nobody
for a
is.
bad cop. No,
And
but
it's it's quite interesting that you said it like that too, because even on the ambulance, it's the same way for us. We don't mean to be assholes. We we just left a call for Meemaw blown her head off, or little kid got killed, or so we're still trying to process and
process. Yep.
get it done, and then oh well, you stubbed your toe. I'm sorry. Get the fuck in the car.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually said in my book, I think the paramedics have the toughest job in emergency response, to be honest, because you don't have, at least I have use of force. I can, whatever. You have none of that, and you're putting up with that, and you're constantly going stuck at a hospital or whatever, and the calls pile up, and like you said, there is no filter for those calls, so there's like you stubbed your toe. How did this even reach me? You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, there's other people that need my help, and no wonder you get angry, right? But yeah, it's the same in policing, really. Because you have your high priority stuff and you have your low priority stuff, and then the low priority stuff might wait 1 or 2 days even. And by the time you get there, and man, you want to deal with a unhappy customer about that, like it's my fault. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I, write your counselor then. Like, people were always shocked when I told them because I got to a point where I just said, there's 8 of us in this population of 200,000. This is my call screen. Come and take a look. Look at my call screen. This is why it took 2 days for us to get here, and they'd be shocked. Shocked. They're like, fuck, I thought there'd be like 30 cops in this city. No, there's 8.
No.
If we're lucky, yeah. So, yeah.
And that is amazing to me. I did policing for a year, and I just could. It wasn't for me. I liked it, but at the same time, I'd rather do the medicine side of things, because I don't know. It was more of a. I get more of an adrenaline rush from the not knowing what I'm running into compared to, oh, we're going on a high speed chase, woohoo! That
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
was fun. I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't the same adrenaline. And like you said, the difference is, uh, to explain to the public is tremendously astronomical. Because I remember actually during FTOs is we had to wait, like you said, 5 days for someone's bike was stolen, but
Yeah,
they were investigating an arson. So
that's right.
that kind of takes priority.
That's right.
And
Exactly. And and it wears on the people doing the job because, we've seen the ones that do the job and then the ones that don't. And it really that's why, like I said, I don't stick up for the bad ones because, you know, not to say that I've worked with a lot of them, but I have worked with bad
there
ones,
are a few.
and there are a few, and it gets tedious and it gets annoying after a while when you're picking up the slack all the time, especially when you're starting to go through whatever it is you're going through, the PTSD or the whatever you're going through, and not even realizing it's happening to you, and then yeah, it takes its toll, and at some point any human's going to blow up, any human's gonna crack up or do whatever, and when you think you're not the person that it's going to happen to, and it does, it's one hell of a rude awakening, that's for sure.
That's the
So
truth. And that's kind of where I was going with this next one right here too. Is what in you changed first when you noticed that you were starting to get burnout? Was it your sleep, your mood, your patience, anger, motivations, or even hell, your relationships?
yeah, all of the above.
That's
I would say. No, I
yeah,
mean
talk
it
about some.
actually it actually started with sleeping. So sleeping was a big issue. I was having nightmares and I just kind of dismissed them as part of the job, right? Like, yeah, I had a big busy day with this call, and of course I'm going to dream about it after. Or, you know, these violent dreams of being in a shootout that never occurred, but just the possibility of it happening or whatever. And then just really screwed up dreams. Like, I'd be playing with my kids in a playground and a plane would fly over and the plane would explode in the air and there'd be body parts flying everywhere. You're like, nothing I've ever experienced, but just but the fact that they were so vivid and real that I would wake up still in that dream, right? Like that is happening. And that still happens to me to this day. Like, I often dream about work and I'll get up and start to get ready for work. And I remember once I woke up with a start and I basically ran into the wall of my bedroom and because I was locked into this dream, right? Like so I just thought, well, whatever. But it was when I started just being numb. Like I was numb. I just didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like I was part of myself. I would feel my emotions, but it was like I was on the outside looking in. Like I just nothing really excited me anymore. Big avid sports fan, didn't really watch them anymore. Um, you know, anything that would give me joy, golf, fishing, all that stuff that I used to do, never did anymore, and didn't really feel like it. And so I would find myself zoning out, like playing on my phone or watching TV or something, and you know, my kids might say, "Dad, Dad," and then I would snap
Yes.
out of it. Yeah, exactly. And so. Um, yeah, I mean, relationships, I don't, I don't think that affected much. I mean, I am divorced now, but that's a different story. Like that,
Yeah. Well.
we're people pleasers and tend to marry people who want to be pleased all the time. So that was one thing. I never slept and I never thought I started feeling this feeling that I was never good enough. Uh, Not only in my relationship because I was told so, but also at work. Yeah, no, yeah, that's a topic for a whole nother thing. But
It's a little toxic there.
yeah, well, that's why I put it in my book, right? Because it's like, obviously I don't name my past relationships and stuff, but I just wanted to put it in there that it does happen, and it's okay that the flip can, or the script can be flipped, and sometimes the abuser can be female and the victim can be a male, and especially in our line of work, because honestly we just want to seek peace, so we'll do whatever it takes to just have some goddamn peace, even if it's 15 minutes in a day. So that's what we will do, and it's not good. Right, like
I
it's.
wonder if that's one of the reasons we have such a high divorce rate.
Well, exactly. I honestly think that. Like, it's. I know, like, I mean, divorce is just like a word you throw out there now. Everybody I know has been divorced, right? But it's I think amongst the guys that I used to work with that are divorced, a lot of them are really good guys, and we've all worked with the pig, right? Like the womanizer, the guy who cheats on his wife all the time, drinks, does all that shit. No, most of the divorces were pretty solid dudes that didn't engage in that kind of thing and just wanted to be a good guy. And I think, as we talk more about men's mental health too, especially because I'm a man, but I don't want to speak for women, but um, naturally we're providers, protectors, and all of this, right? So when we step outside of that realm, or when that takes over in the marriage, we want to do everything in our power to save it. And I think, you know, it takes it goes against the grain to say this can't be saved, and it takes a lot out of dudes, like, and good ones, like, I've yeah, like I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's not fun, man, because admitting defeat for us and first responders is not an option.
No.
So
And that's like you said earlier, your numbness, that probably plays into that factor in the end. Is, do we become numb to our own feelings, and do
uh,
we mistake our numbness for strength?
yes, and I think that we do. I think it's definitely like again, I've learned since then that it's a coping mechanism and all that. But at the time, it's self-protect. It's all about self-protection. So if you make yourself numb to the emotions that you're actually feeling, none of those emotions really matter, and you can just carry on like a robot. Unfortunately, you carry on like a robot. So you've lost that gift of empathy. You've lost that passion to give a shit about your victims and stuff at work. You've lost your passion about self-care. You've lost your passion about eating. You've lost your passion about pretty much everything. So th that leads to if you can't help yourself, then you're no good to others. And really, when you're like that and you're still working, you are no good to others, including your team, because somebody's got to pick up your slack somewhere, or you're going to make a mistake, and management ain't going to have your back uh, when you make a mistake in that kind of state of mind. We're not going to have your back anyway if you make a mistake on duty, but especially, you know, if you make a mistake in that frame of mind, is all on you. So,
Very true.
have if you didn't already know that out there, that's your number one reason to get help for yourself is you think you're going to be letting down your team by not doing it or by doing it and maybe taking you off the road for a while.
You're letting them
But
let down by not
but
asking.
you staying on there is think of it as almost selfish because it's you're not protecting anyone at all and you're gonna make a mistake and your name's gonna get in the newspaper and it's not gonna be a good story for you. And you know like there's never a good cop did something wrong story in the news. It's
That's true.
that's the only time we make the news, right? So you don't want to be that guy. You don't want your name out there like that. So save yourself the trouble, get the help you need, and and be serious about it because if you kind of switch your thinking on that and make that the priority, maybe you'll think about getting help a little differently too.
Yeah, and that goes back to your PTSD, I think, and the trauma that we have, and it's important because to me, a lot of people throw those two words around simultaneously like they're nothing, um, eh, because people don't quite understand the true meaning behind it. If you're in the military, you're not first responder, you don't actually have true PTSD type deals. I'm not saying other people don't, but if you don't have the PTSD, you're not going to understand what PTSD truly is. And it is from our traumas that we've witnessed, that we've dealt with. Um, and again, I'm not just saying that military and first responders have it. There are people out there that don't have never had, service related crap happen to them that have PTSD. So anyone going to jump on me for that? Please don't. It's not always a dramatic thing. It's sometimes it looks like we're just being short at the house with our wives. As you said earlier, we're not sleeping. We're getting angry over nothing. We're feeling the numbness. We're avoiding everybody, wanting the quiet, but also hating the quietness at the
Yes.
same damn time. Making the jokes instead of saying the honest things. For instance, hey, that baby made me feel bad, or instead of we make the joke of, oh well, that poor little thing just fell off the tree, or whatever. Yeah, it's just our way of coping, and so on that side of things, what did that look like for you in real life before you noticed it was actually the PTSD kicking in?
Um, well, it I think before my break, I really started feeling like I lacked a purpose. I was starting to get confused as to what my purpose was at work.
Gotcha.
Um, because we were constantly told one thing, but they were doing another. And I started really noticing the virtue signaling change. So the message to the general public was, you know, look at how inclusive we are. Look at all of this stuff. And while that's somewhat important, so is fighting crime. And I thought we were supposed to be a neutral party. So we were just it just had felt like we lost our way. Let's just put it that way.
Gotcha.
So under that backdrop, I left my detective branch because of circumstances. They were moving our unit to another town, which was about an hour and 15-minute commute from where I was living. And I was living in that town because I was separated. So I was actually living with my mom at the time. Well, my ex-wife was in the marital home. And so I had to leave detectives in order for me to be around. So we were working 12-hour shifts, and then, in order for me to even see my kids or whatever, I couldn't afford to be on call all the time. I couldn't afford the hour and 15-minute commute on top of the 12-hour shift without overtime back and forth just to get my kids to their extracurriculars or, and see them or whatever. So I went back to the road and the other town that was close to where I was living. So it's only about a half an hour away. Um, so I took a $10,000 a year pay cut
Wow.
to do that.
Right.
And then I brought the wealth and knowledge from detectives and stuff back to the road. But I was questioned every step of the way of doing it. Right. And so I had to explain why I was leaving because, oh, don't worry, sir. It's not because of your choice to move like seriously, like it was like trying to coddle a baby sometimes. And I was like, it's not because of your idea. I don't care about the idea. What I care about right now is my life. So, I'm just trying to stay afloat here and still work. And so, anyway, I went back to the road, and there was a couple sergeants, a staff sergeant, um, on that shift, and so I would be called a lot by the management of the shifts. Do we need a warrant for this? Okay. And then the kids started coming to me, right? Because I was a field training officer, it was all of these things. So I was just a natural leader. I hate talking about myself, but I believe in leading by example. So there's nothing that I wouldn't do that I wouldn't expect anyone else to. So they started coming to me for advice, right? Like how to interview people, just things because these kids are fresh out of police college, fresh out of training. So they want to learn how to do the job. Well, nobody was really showing them how to do the job. So I was like, well, fuck it, I'll do it. Right? Senior constable. So that's the dawn of time in policing. That's usually what happens is the senior patrol guys look after the junior ones. If there's an issue, it goes up the chain. So that's what I was doing. And I got called out on that. I got brought into the staff sergeant's office and cornered by the three of them, and they basically gave me shit because the kids were coming to me for advice, and I wasn't going to them. And then they started bringing up my marriage and stuff, and I'm like, wow,
It has nothing to do with work.
no, this is a huge HR issue, but whatever. I just said I just went off, right? Like I just lost it essentially, and
I blame you.
explained to them why this is going on, the $10,000 a year pay cut, this, that, the other. You're not giving me leadership opportunities that clearly need leadership because none of these fucking people know how to do their job. And if you did your job, then why they would be coming to me, right? So why am I here, right? And so I think that's when I knew something was wrong because old Andy could have taken that with a grain of salt or not even cared. But I took that as a deep personal cut. Suddenly, everything that I've done in my career to that point meant nothing. And so I left that meeting broken and I cried. And one of the recruits that I trained, very proud of him now. He's in our training branch and stuff. But
Sweet.
yeah, he's a good kid. And so anyway, he came up to me and he's like, Andy, you need to get the fuck out of here. Like, you need to leave. You need to go take care of yourself. This place is going to kill you. And I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, it was going to kill me. And so I went to my doctor. Blood pressure was 180 over 130, cortisol through the roof, always on hypervigilance. Yeah, so that's what I mean. By the time you have that somebody intervene, it's already almost too late. Like, I was a walking heart attack or stroke waiting to happen. And he's like, I can't even let you go to work based on that alone. And then obviously, on the psychology side of things, I got my diagnosis of post-traumatic stress, major depressive disorder, all of these things. And the rest is history. And honestly, like, after I got that diagnosis, there was a weight lifted off, but I felt very guilty. And it almost took, like, I would say it took about a year of me just recovering, sleeping, getting the will to want to work out again. There's just stuff like that. And once I got onto that footing is when I started writing the book. So like, I look back at what the defining moment was. That was the defining moment. Now, leading up to all of that, there was a ton of other defining moments, but that was the major one. Like, I had the Glock in my mouth, and
Right.
and and
I'm glad that that did not happen, because we would not be having this conversation today, and this is a
well,
good
this is the message. This is one message I'm trying to get out too, is that I didn't tell anybody about what I was going through before even that happened, right? So trying to report that would have been like, fuck, like, the alarm bells that would have gone off at headquarters if I had said anything that was going on would have been, my career would have been sewered. So anyway, I thankfully I didn't do it, but one of the things that I'm trying to say to people is that, especially in our profession, is that, I've been there, and I've been very, very, very close to the edge, and I could tell you from experience, no matter how shitty it is after that, it's much better than that. And all you have to do is just think of the loved ones you have here before you do that. Just do me a favor and think of that, and then pick up the phone or fucking text me or fucking reach out to me on Instagram and we'll talk. I don't give a shit where you are,
Same here.
because
Yep.
yeah, the world's a much better place with you in it. And you have a gift now. You have something to share. You have something to empower people with that experience. And nobody can take that away from you. You were in the pit of hell,
Yeah, exactly.
and you walked out now because you decided not to do it.
Be proud of it.
Amen. Yeah, like, just be proud of that. And that's, yeah, that's some king shit right there, like, unless you've been there, you don't understand. And you don't understand the irrationality of your thinking at that point. But once you realize, holy shit, what I've just done and what could have happened, and you reflect on that, um, yeah, that's when the strength really starts to come out. Then that's when the healing starts.
Very true. And one thing that you said on the forum as well is leadership and accountability um, should be changed, and I agree with that, because the accountability and awareness that we should be able to provide to people that need that help. It shouldn't. I'm sure you put it for another reason, because it makes that makes things fail. But the reason, to me, that should be changed is, if you didn't threaten people's jobs for them to come to you for help, that would be a hell of a lot better for our entire fields. B, it'd be better for the mental health of everybody. And I want to get your feedback on that as well. But that may have been what if I was reading your form wrong, correct me. But
No, no, you're right on. I think, see, I mean, up here, and I don't know the situation in some of the departments down there, but I do follow quite a few of them on Instagram, and it seems to be a trending pattern of, outwardly we give a shit,
right,
inwardly they don't.
no,
And I'll give you an example again. Like, I mean, it's this wasn't long ago. I was diagnosed in 2021, so this may have been in 2022 or something like that. But anyway, a friend of mine who had just returned from being off with PTSD, he uh, made his supposed recovery, and they put him back to work. And like always, they put them back on patrol. High frequency, highest risk. Makes no sense to me, but that's what they do. And so anyway, he wanted to have some added responsibility. He actually had more time on than I did, so he wanted to get the active sergeant's course and maybe be a field training officer again, get his qualifications back and that sort of stuff. And he was told no
Oh, wow.
because of his mental stuff, and that if he didn't like it, he could go to my person, meaning my psychologist, get him to write him off so he doesn't have to come back, just like I did.
Well, that's
That's what
fucked
he was
up.
told. Yeah, dude. Like, and so that's another reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because that kind of got my fire going. And I learned about this kind of during my recovery, but as the fire was starting to build. And it's not shocking to me that that occurred, because the 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 stigma is not held by those who have been through it or those who have witnessed someone going through it. They know this shit is real. The stigma is held by people who have never been through it. And typically, those are people that have either been promoted too fast or they come from the administrative side of things and they're suddenly thrust onto the road with something that they feel they need to prove. Like never written a search warrant, never investigated the way out of a paper bag, never done anything like that. And if they did have investigative time, it was in a branch that the investigations are typically done for them by the time it reaches them. So, so it's almost like they have something to prove. The other side of that is that that leadership has changed in the sense that it used to be where they would have your back. They don't anymore. It's like a pack of hens that are constantly clucking at one another, trying to leapfrog each other for the next promotion. It's no longer about the people in their charge. So they want to make examples of people, and the only way they know how to make examples of people is to insult them. And I think that number one is something that needs to change. Their training also needs to change, because I don't know about you, but if I knew a colleague was struggling, it would be hard to see. And if you're a supervisor who's overlooking their paperwork, their department, you know, seeing them operate on the road, maybe go to a couple of their calls and see how they're handling it. I mean, if they're coming to work with booze on their breath, I mean, this stuff is pretty simple to see, right? And so how do you get them help, right? How do you do, like, we all have a duty to report, right? It's like social worker, whatever. Like if somebody disclosed something to me that, of a nature, or I notice something, I have a duty to report that. Like if a kid's suffering down the street, I have a duty to report that. What makes supervision any different? Because the problem is that they will let it go because they need meat in the seat, right? And they want to give the appearance that that everything's fine. But when that officer fucks up eventually, and they will, who's got their back?
Nobody.
Who's got that up? Exactly. That's the guy that ends up in the news with a big fuck up, right? That's beating the shit out of some homeless guy that talked back to him, doing something dumb like that, or using excessive force, or whatever, drinking on the job and crashing a cruiser, or smoking weed on the job and hanging off trees. Like there's a story about that in Toronto. There's some officers that smoked a bunch of really strong weed, and they were climbing trees and acting all weird in uniform. This is what happens. Right. And again, I'm not making excuses, because there's also, you got to take an inward look at yourself and have some hard conversations with yourself if you're feeling bad and you need help, right? But at the same time, like, how does it get to that point, right? Like, somebody has to notice. And if you're a supervisor who truly cares about the people under your charge, you'd think you'd see that.
And that's the problem. And I think another thing is, as you put again, you wrote this as well, as it's a strength, not a weakness, to ask for help. You know, and I think the stigma that we all have is you ask for help, you're weak. That's 100% not true.
No, no, no.
You're strong.
Vulnerability. Yeah, vulnerability to me is a strength. And but being a pushover is not a strength.
Right.
So if you kind of change your psychology on that and think of yourself that you're a pushover if you just continue along with the norm and continue to self-destruct because you're doing it to please others, that means you're a pushover. But where this true strength lies is understanding that you have a problem, right? And then you go and you seek help for it. And us as people pleasers, that's where the crux comes in, right? Because we're worried about what other people think of us. Believe me, there will be a time when you do not give a shit what other people think of you anymore. You do not care because, again, you have to look at the source. And the one good thing or the one thing that PTSD has given me is an incredible insight on people. Now, I had a lot of courses and training, interviewed bad guys, detectives, all that shit, whatever. But so I learned to be a good read on people. But this has given me a brand new insight on people's motivations and recognizing patterns in human behavior. And once you kind of free yourself of that jail, it's quite the awakening. And I don't know how to describe it, but it's just all of a sudden nothing really matters. You're like nothing that's frivolous matters anymore. It becomes, oh well,
Right.
you know,
Viewpoint
like,
almost.
yeah, okay, so you believe that, great. I just choose not to hang around with you anymore or listen to what you have to say. And it's quite an empowering feeling, and it's a feeling I think most of us have never had before. It doesn't make us arrogant or cocky or anything like that. Maybe it comes across as that to some people who seek attention, but I think it's about boundary setting, to be quite honest, and we've never really set those boundaries with anybody, including our work. And so once you finally learn how to do that, it's quite incredible. Yeah, like so yeah, like it's 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 just it's about a reprogramming of the way you see things, and your true friends are always going to have your back. So honestly, my circle, I learned who's important and who's not, and I govern my circle accordingly. And it is what it is. And the one thing is that the PTSD is never going to go away. You just learn to live with
Right.
it,
It's
right?
manageable, but it's
So
never going to go away.
yeah, it's
And
but it's a long road to get to where it's manageable, and it's a tough road. It's a self-reflective road. It's a road that you have to be willing to go down and ask yourself some serious questions, to be truthfully, brutally honest with yourself, and you know, be open to change and understand too, you're not alone. That's
right.
the other thing. Like that's the other
That's very
insidious thing.
and
Yeah.
that and that's to me, like, my podcast is my outlet for this. And your book is probably yours as well, to help everyone be aware of your journey, and be aware that you did survive. And it's a tool that you're using to help teach others. That's tremendous. I guess on your book, is this, did you start writing it to help relieve yourself, or was it to help show others of what can happen in the end?
I think a bit of both. It's actually my therapist suggested that I should start putting
Wow.
some of this shit on paper, and so I had an English degree, and I was a journalist, so I knew how to write. So I thought, okay, yeah, like honestly, it was kind of my exposure therapy. Let's put it that way. There was chapters in there that were incredibly hard to write, and some that were easier to write. Like, I mean, one day I could bang out 50 pages, and be like, whoa. I'd wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and look at the clock. It's 8 o'clock at night, and it just seemed like 2 minutes had passed by, and I'd written 50 pages. Then,
That's cool.
yeah, like, and then, especially about the early stuff, and the training and stuff. But then, there was other things about certain calls and the chapter about my father and stuff that uh, took a lot longer to write. I would write one page and be completely exhausted for 2 days, and then I would get back at it and kind of plug my way through it. And yeah, and then like all of a sudden I was done, after about 6 months, and I was like, well, now what? Right? So started the publishing route, which was a long process, but once that was done, yeah, I mean, so I just thought I'd put it out there, so it's kind of started as personal therapy, but ended up being something that I wanted to share with people to help them.
So
Like,
what would you want people to feel when they read it? That's a question I forgot to ask earlier.
yeah, depends on the audience. I think for the ones that suffering, I want them to identify with it, first of all. And hopefully it leads them to question what they're going through and stop passing it off as something that's just normal. So if they identify with the stuff that's going on in there, it's time to go get help. Uh, for, say, a loved one, a family member, or a friend of a first responder, education. That behind the smile, behind, you know, the guy you love or your brother or whatever, this is lurking. If they've changed, tell them. If this is what they look like now and they were this something completely different 5 years ago or 6 years ago, you need to tell them,
Yep.
say something to them. And then for the general public who has no affiliation to emergency response at all, education. This is what we go through. This is a true account, as true as I could make it and as raw as I could make it, that this is what we go through. If you don't like us, that's one thing, whatever. But if you're indifferent or you're a supporter or whatever, just to create some empathy. That's it. Just some understanding, because we're terrible at explaining what we do. And honestly, it's like, for the amount of negative stuff we hear about first responders in the news, here's what leads to that, or here's what really goes on behind the scenes, or this is why it seems like we're lazy because we can't solve a case because we don't have enough proof. We live in a country where you're innocent until proven guilty, and if I can't prove you guilty, then I can't lay a charge, even though we all know you did it, right?
Yes.
So it's right. It's just that type of thing, and the heartbreak that goes along with that on our side of things. Because yeah, like I say, we do a terrible job of explaining what we do. So honestly, for them, it's just like an education, honestly, and I'd be happy to answer questions from anybody who had any questions about that. But that was kind of my goal.
I gotcha. So did writing this change the look at your outlook on hope by any chance, or did?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when I was pretty discontent with society and pretty discontent with myself and my place within it. And I think not only writing this, but also connecting with great people like you in this process has kind of renewed my faith in humanity, and it's also kind of renewing my faith in myself, to be quite honest. Like, I could not picture doing this 5 years ago.
Oh, wow,
Um,
that's good. That's
there's
blessing.
no way. Yeah, there's no way. And it's kind of given me a purpose. And since I can't police anymore, which was very important to me, and I love my job, but I can't do it anymore. I'm not allowed. They've medically retired me. It is what it is. I needed a purpose, and so I've done my part for the general public, and now it's time for me to fight for people who are in first response and may not be able to fight for themselves.
And fight for yourself at the same time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Bring the
So
reality forward.
yes, sir. So if there's a responder listening right now, on shift or off shift, still answering calls, still helping people, still checking on everybody else like we always do, still making the dark jokes, pretending they're okay, but privately, like we all have, feel themselves slowly sinking. What do they need to hear from you today?
Well, if they're at all feeling off, um, you need to start researching therapists that specialize in first response. Because in today's world of technology, you could find one in a half a country over and do it over like what we're talking right now. Because you need that professional third party opinion, right? Because you're never going to say, yes, I'm sick. I'm not, I'm injured. No, you need that third party and follow their advice and be honest. Be honest
Biggest thing.
with what's
Yeah.
happening to you. Yeah, don't water it down. Be honest. Uh, the other thing I would say is go to your doctor. If you're not doing your regular health checkups, go get your blood work done. Go get your blood pressure taken. Like if you're operating on high cortisol, and the one thing I didn't mention is just take it from me. I didn't go to the doctor at all when I worked, ever. And the first time I went to the doctor was when he told me my blood pressure was 180 over 130. If I didn't go to the doctor, then I would have died. But as simple as that. I couldn't have lasted more than 6 months with blood pressure like that. There's no way.
Yeah, that's true.
And so then I have my blood sugar taken. I find out after losing 60 pounds in this journey, I have type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
Right. And
Tough one.
then I have high.
I feel
I,
you.
I well, I had no idea. My blood sugars were like 11 when I got my blood done. Yeah, and then high cholesterol and hips ache, and it's all because of high cortisol. So the science behind the physiological effects are real, and if I just ignored that, like I don't know, they could be chopping off my foot now, like just stuff like that that you didn't even think of. I don't even think of. And then also the science behind the brain reprogramming. And it's true because if you're always in what do they call it, the fight or flight, or when the prefrontal cortex is taking over everything, and that's the hormone that's being released is the cortisol. It shrinks your hippocampus, which stores short-term memory and that sort of thing. So your brain chemistry changes. And if you find yourself that you like, and I mean not just playfully forgetting, but like short-term memory forgetting shit, like genuinely forgetting shit. And I do that now. I've really noticed it now. Like it's bad. But that's a symptom of all of that physiologically. So that's why it's also important. Go see your doctor. Like just go to your doctor. And if they give you meds, take like, it's going to save you a whole lot of heartache down the road. So listen to yourself, research, do, right? Because ain't nobody going to come and save you. So, you got to reach out. You got to let people know something's wrong. Otherwise, everybody's just going to think everything's fine. So,
All right. So, what do you tell the people that?
My
just-
wife, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do you tell the people that are just now starting out, that don't want to lose their job, that trained, that did all the schooling, that are starting to say, that are thinking that, oh shit, something's going on? What do you tell the newbies?
that is a good point. I mean, the newbies, like, because most of our trauma, most of our trauma is accumulated, right? So if
Yeah.
they're if they're just starting out and starting to feel that way, the first question that they got to ask themselves is this job for me? Right? Because if it's not, there's absolutely no disrespect that I've ever encountered where someone has left the job just because they're like, this is not what I expected and I didn't want to do that. Like kind of like your story there. And guys are like, good, like if this isn't for you, this was going to be a hell of a long 30 years. If if you don't like this job and you don't want to do it, get the hell, yeah, get out now. Like, I mean, because it's not uncommon. Like I've seen it quite a bit. And so they go through all the training and everything, and they're like, wow, this sucks, and they go and start something new in their life. If they're bottling it in, I would say if they're really new, like still with their coach officer and stuff, because it takes about a year once you go through police college here with your coach officer before you're on your own. Talk to your coach officer first.
Yep, talk to your
That
FTO.
that yeah, that's what they're there for, man. And if they're a good FTO, they're gonna know something's off anyway. Because if you're behind, like if the recruit's behind the FTO going into the house first and stuff like that, yeah, they're probably like,
Off.
or not talking to
Oh,
people. It's
wow.
like, yeah, like there's there's normal and then there's something's up. And so yeah, I would just say that because yeah, talk to your FTO because I think that's your first line of supervision. If you go above that,
Make sure you follow the chain of command.
well, yeah, like if you go to your sarge or you go to your shift captain or whatever, that stigma, especially if you're new, is real. And if it's just a phase that you're going through, see, the thing is that this is a really good question because the thing is that if you're nervous and you're apprehensive and you're kind of going through that new, I always used to tell my recruits when I was an FTO that if you didn't feel that way, I would be worried, right? If you felt nothing, right? Because then I'd be thinking you're kind of some kind of sociopath, and we've all worked with that. So that's a good thing. So it's about controlling that at the beginning. So that's why I would advise going to your field training officer, because if it starts becoming a problem, then he can bring it up the chain of command. But if it's just because you're growing into the position, okay. Like there's because nobody knows what they're signing up for until you actually get out there and do it,
That's the
right?
truth.
Like you can have all of these controlled scenarios while you're training and stuff like that. And you go through them with flying colors, but it's all a controlled scenario. There's no unpredictability to it, right? As soon as you hit the streets, it's like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? And I went through the same thing. Like on my first night, I was like,
What's
what?
that?
Yeah, why did I do this, man? Like holy shit, I don't even care about the money. This is wacko crap. Like drugs everywhere, people swear and fights and uh,
My
but
first two shifts with a bunch of naked people, but anyways.
yeah, like I mean it's you never know what's gonna happen, right? Like it's like what is like and this is all crap. I survived 32 years on this earth and never saw in my hometown or neighboring towns, right? Like it's suddenly within 3 minutes of being on the road in a uniform, this is what's happening. So I I just take that one. Yeah, that's tough, but I think that's the way to go. Talk to your coach officer and your field training officer about that, and because our conversations that I used to have with my FTO and I had as an FTO were conversations. What happens in the cruiser kind of stays in the cruiser, and that way you can actually talk about stuff that matters.
Make sure the body cam is not on during this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And that was before body cams, but yeah, you don't want that. Or have the conversation outside the car because sometimes they have the
Oh
car
yeah, the in car.
mics in there and stuff. So, but yeah, I think that would be the way to go because I just shudder to think in today's leadership that if somebody did come forward like that to somebody of significance, like of rank, I mean, it could sewer their career before it even starts, and
Very
and we
true.
don't want that. Yeah, and all for doing the right thing.
Right. Very true. Making sure that they are there to help the entire crew. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess one final question here is, if people want to read your book, follow your work, connect with you, or learn more about what you're doing around first responder mental health, where could they find out about you? What could they do?
Okay, so the easiest way to reach out to me is on my Instagram page. So that's beaten black and blue book underscores in between each because there's no spaces obviously on Instagram. Um, just give me a follow and you can message me directly on there. There's also a link to my website on there as well, where you can get the book. But the book is also available on Amazon.com. And if you just search up Beaten Black and Blue, Journey into the Light, or Andrew McLean, it should come up and it'll be right there.
Andrew, I appreciate you coming on, telling everything that you told today. This conversation's not just about police work; it's about burnout, PTSD, trauma, recovery, leadership, accountability, hell, awareness, and what happens to the people that are built to help but don't know how to get the help. And you said first responders get one thing right more than we admit, and that's our desire to help. And I think that's the heart of this episode. The desire to help is good. That's the desire we had, and why we answer the call we answer, why we check on our coworkers, why we keep showing up to every damn call we show up to, even though we're completely exhausted, as we were saying earlier. But if we were to turn the same care inward, that might build a culture that leadership may not be happy with or honest about. We can't keep pretending that it's fake. The goal is to stop everybody from sinking, and not let them not make it back. So you want to leave people with this episode. You want people to leave this episode with hope, and that's what you said in the forum as well. I think that's what this conversation is going to give them. It's not easy hope, not fake hope, but it's the kind that stays. And you can ask for help, people. You can get recover. You can rebuild. You're not weak for needing support. And your story is not over just because you hit a dark chapter in your life. Always remember that. As Andrew said, he came close to it. I've came close to it before. But before we close, what's the one thing you want people to remember after this episode ends?
That your life is important, and you deserve to be happy, and you deserve peace, right? And go seek it out if you don't feel it.
Awesome. That's it right there. So that was Andrew McLean, author, advocate, police officer for 18 years. Thank you for being here, and thank you for trusting us with your story.
Oh, no, thank you very much for the forum and the opportunity. That was a great conversation. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Let me go ahead and hit stop real quick.
Small victories.
If you think it's too heavy to say it anyway. It beats a eulogy. You don't have to apologize for surviving however you can. You're not the reason things are heavy. You're the reason they're still moving. Need support right now? Reach out to me. Reach out to somebody. Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. You're not alone. Not in this job. Not in this fight. Want to share your story or connect? Visit critical-run.com or message the Facebook page, Dispatched and Dysfunctional. We're building this for you, for them, for all of us.